Let's Talk Jinx, a weekly Jinx video we do every Wednesday about anything to do with Jinx, as well as this video acting as a weekly discussion thread on the Jinx subreddit, our League of Jinx. Make sure to go check that out. And for today's topic, let's talk about the crit items that are eventually coming as we head into Season 9 pretty soon here, as well as specifically what would be the new build path for crit AD carries and Jinx specifically. As we might or might not know, there are experimental changes to things like Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, Hex Drinker, the Zeal items, and one of the things about those changes on the PvE that's kind of experimental about them is that one of them hasn't really been decided on because they kind of want to gauge what the community feels will be good for players or not. Also, apologize in advance, I'm probably using gameplay footage in the background instead of doing the usual like cartoon animation stuff. A, because I'm lazy, but B, because in Nexus Blitz, which is what I'm probably using, is the whole turning on fire thing, and that's probably the closest that I could probably do as a visual to kind of the old crit items that people say they were, how powerful they were when you would get fed, how you could crit people's faces off, and how ridiculous it could be. And so since I get on fire in this game, I just kind of was using that for visual representation. But let's get into the items themselves. Just a quick rundown in case you don't know. Two directions that are thinking about for Infinity Edge is one, where it's 3,400 gold, it gives you 70 attack damage and 40% crit chance, and has a unique passive that increases the critical strike bonus damage by a fair and balanced amount. That's a running joke they have going, because I was complaining about that maybe Infinity Edge, old Infinity Edge, at least in other roles that were complaining about this, wasn't very fair. I could have my own thoughts on that, but I'm not going to, because whatever. The second direction they want to go is make Infinity Edge cost 5,000 gold. It gives you 80 attack damage, 30% attack speed, and 5 movement speed, which pretty much the same thing, increases critical strike chance by 50% and critical strike bonus damage by a fair and balanced amount. Now if we go off of these two, and I go off of, let's say, the worst case scenario in terms of, expensiveness, the 5,000 one, one of the things that I personally like about that, on a side note, is that was a thing that, say, top laners were complaining about, was how cheap crit items were. If we get fed and we get this item and we pop off, I feel like that's about as fair as they can make it, making Infinity Edge the most expensive item basically in the game at that point. Maybe that's just me, but that's way more expensive now suddenly than Trinity Force and the Hydras and all that. So if we get fed and we get this item and we pop off and you still say that crit items are too cheap, I don't know what to tell you at that point. But that's why, if that was the case, that still would put you out about 5,000 gold. Now, it does have 2 BF swords and a Zeal item in between, and most likely you're buying completed boots in there as well. So it's kind of like a BF sword, a double BF sword, Zeal item, 2 boots, item spike. The boots being 11,000 gold. 11,000, yeah, I can't do math. 1,100 gold, so it's a total of 6,100 gold with the Infinity Edge and the boots. Now, Zeal items, meanwhile, would also then be 2,800 gold across the board. Since Jinx builds not rapid fire, well, she does build rapid fire cannon, but Runon's Hurricane, I have everything messed up right now. I should probably have written a script. Because she builds that as well, that seems it will probably still be 2,800 as well. So then, just off of that one, the boots and the Infinity Edge, we're talking of what, roughly 8,900 gold? It's almost 9,000 gold. And that's not including a second for a triple crit build, right? The second Zeal item would take us over 10,000 gold. So at that point, if we got that fed building these items, I don't know, I feel like that would be fair, but maybe that's not necessarily the direction we want to go. One of the things I also want to discuss, though, is let's say we have to go this route, but mages are still relevant in the bottom lane. They're still heavy, they poke us, they hurt us, Cassiopeia made it through pick ban. One of the things they want to do is take Hex Drinker for 1,300 gold and make it build into Phantom Dancer, actually, which is still a Zeal item. So if you have that Zeal, you could build it into Phantom Dancer and then also have the defensive stats of Hex Drinker, but it will change the passive. The passive would be upon taking damage that will reduce your health below 30%. It grants the shield, and it's pretty much Hex Drinker's passive that also builds now out of Stopwatch. You could build Stopwatch in the Hex Drinker and still get a crit item and not deviate from your path all that much. It would mean you wouldn't have, say, Runon's Hurricane for the extra AoE range or Rapid Fire Cannon early, but it would mean if you needed to really deal with a mage in the bottom lane that was really aggressive, you wouldn't have to deviate from a crit path all that much, right? You could turn that Hex Drinker into that Zeal item and then still get the Infinity Edge and such like that. Still, we're talking about 89,000 gold if I'm doing the math right, because it's still 2,800 gold, boots, and then the more expensive Infinity Edge. And then, of course, there's still Storm Rays if you want to get it down at the bottom below, which will also still be 2,800 gold. It'll be relatively cheap. Last Whisper will build and do 20% armor penetration and be 1,300 gold, actually. I imagine even though they don't have it listed, it still builds into the upgrades as well, so that will still be 2,700 gold So depending on what your build is with the more expensive one, you're still looking at probably over 10,000 gold before you really get online with all the items that would be on live. Now, Infinity Edge does more, this is a more expensive one, so maybe you won't need that many items, right? Like maybe you actually only need this one and the first seal item and of course boots, and you're actually kind of good to go. We're still gonna have to wait and see. But with the least expensive one, right, that's only 3,400 gold. So suddenly that one's probably more akin to the old Infinity Edge before they did this change to begin with, what they tried to get it around to, the one we were kind of used to before all the changes happened in 8.11. So that one would actually be 1,600 gold less, right? So however you feel about doing that with the items you get, again, if you have to get the Phantom Dancer because of mages, that's one thing, I don't know, let's talk about that really quick on a side note, our opinion on Phantom Dancer specifically, because I've seen a lot of discussion and debate around the whole Hex Drinker building into it and the whole fact that it doesn't do the one thing anymore, it'll do the other thing because of other champions like Yasuo and stuff that build crit in other lanes. I personally am on this mind. I'm not saying this is 100% right, factual, you gotta listen to this, this is the truth, this is the law, and if you disagree with me, you're wrong and you're bad. But my feeling on this is what I kind of like about this, I guess, is like, hey, if I do have to go this route, because I'm terrible against mages in the bottom lane, I've accepted that for now. I'm still practicing to try and get better, but they kind of give me the workaround a bit more than AD carries do. So if I have to go this route, at least, even if I don't build this as my first Zeal item, I could still build this into maybe a second Zeal item later on. So I could sit on this if I need to, and it's not taking up space, right? It's not taking up space like, hey, that's a Maul of my Mortius eventually that I gotta get rid of because I need that second Zeal item. This can maybe occupy space, I then finish Runon's Hurricane, finish the Infinity Edge, and then turn this into Phantom Dancer later, right? Like, that's what I kind of like about this, is like the flexibility, so to speak. It's not, hey, I guess that's it for this slot, I have 6 slots, one of them is boots as it is, this one now has to just be Hex Drinker that goes into Maul of my Mortius, even if I don't really need it outside of laning phase, it can turn into a crit item now, and I can still feel like a crit champion, I guess, because that's when crit champions feel the best because of how they've been balanced. It's when they're critting, when they're doing crit, when they're building crit items. So, that's what I want to leave you on, actually, is a discussion around not just Phantom Dancer, but what do you think a build path will be based on these prices? Do you think it'll change at all, or do you think, you know, maybe, for example, everybody will rush Infinity Edge because it's so expensive? Right now, you have alternating people saying, you know, either go Storm Razor into Zeal item, go Zeal item into Storm Razor, go Zeal item into Infinity Edge. So for all the flexibility that I'm talking about, maybe this changes that if we get the more expensive Infinity Edge, that we all have to rush that item. But maybe that item's stats are so good that it maybe even feels good to rush it, I guess, right? With that being said, one of the things I will finally just touch up on, maybe you build the double BF sword in Zeal, but don't finish the Infinity Edge and turn that Zeal into a Zeal item as well, right? Like, there are different ways we could go, I just don't know which one's optimal yet, and maybe with we discuss this, we'll all together kind of figure out what's optimal. And of course, if you build a crit champion in another lane and you want to jump in the conversation, feel free to, right? You play Trinimir and you're like, well, I don't want to finish this 5,000 gold item, I want to finish the Blade of the Ruined King, but I can sit on this Zeal and build it into something eventually later, etc, etc. So, that's all for this video. Bit of a longer video than usual, but that's why I'm also probably putting gameplay footage. Again, I'm lazy, I'm sorry. We'll be back to the usual cartoon animation style that we do next week, I promise. But thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell notification, the actual subscribe button, as well as, of course, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to jump in the comment section so we can have a discussion about this topic. Thank you so much for watching, but I don't know which video will be next, because life can have a lot of kinks. So until this time, take care. ggGetJinxed. Thank you for watching, and enjoy pizza responsibly. And one final thing I should actually probably note before I close this video. These are experimental changes. So one thing I want to also add on at the very end of this video, in case you're still watching, is they want feedback about these items too, right? These items aren't guaranteed to ship as they are right now. Both they could change, their prices could change, their stats could change, and they want feedback from you guys to kind of understand what you guys kind of want and don't want. So if you don't want the 5,000 Infinity Edge, make sure you let them know. Also, make sure you let them know in a civil and constructive manner. They will listen more likely if you are more civil and constructed with your argument. I mentioned this once before. Kind of try and make your argument about what you think the change will be, what you think the impact of the changes will be like, and what possible solutions do you think would be an answer to those problems that you think will be created. Try and also leave out curse words. That kind of helps, by the way. So, that being said, thank you for watching this video. See you next week.